Hi guys, welcome back to Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at a Afghanistan pattern 1888 long bayonet. Now these were made to fit a couple of different rifles in service. So the Mark II Lee Metford rifles, both the long rifles and carbines, as well as the 303 British Martini Metford rifles, again both the rifles and the carbines. Now, they were made by the Afghan arsenal, which is the Mazar-e-Sharif arsenal. I butchered that. I don't speak good Pashto or Dari. And this particular one was made from 1909 onwards. I'm not sure of the exact year. The exact timeline of when these were manufactured isn't terribly clear. I don't have that information on hand. I can't find it anywhere. I know there is a fantastic reference out there on eBayonet.com. A guy called Otto has made a CD you can buy called Bayonets of Afghanistan. That's a fantastic resource. I still haven't got my hands on that. I really need to, but yeah, no excuses. Now, the Afghan arsenal, or the Mazar-e-Sharif, was based out of Kabul, which is the capital of Afghanistan. Now, jump into a little bit of the history, sort of what was happening at the time, so you get a little bit of context as to why the Afghanis are using a British style of bayonet. So, after the Second Anglo-Afghan War, which I think was like the 1870s or something like that, Afghanistan became a British protectorate state, or protected state. And Britain controlled their foreign relations and made like all their decisions for them, and pretty much took like protection money from them. They bullied them a little bit, not terribly nice. But Afghanistan was still an independent country or an independent state at the time. And because they were a British protectorate, they were using British weapons. So they were using Martini Henrys, Lee Metfords, and later SMLEs as well. Now, these weapons and their bayonets were both purchased from the UK, and they were also manufactured domestically in Afghanistan. The Lee Metford and Martini Metford rifles were eventually replaced in Afghani service by, well, the SMLE and the P14 rifles with their accompanying bayonets, the pattern 1907 and the pattern 1913 bayonet. I don't know how long they were in service for. I don't know how much use they saw. They probably saw a bit of use in the Third Anglo-Afghan War in 1919, where the Afghans got their independence from the British finally, and probably a lot more after that. I mean, we still see photos from the recent war in Afghanistan during the global war on terror, where ancient equipment is still being used. You know, Martini Henrys are still being used. So it's not unreasonable to think that these were still in service. As to whether or not they're actually used, I can't think of any instances where the Taliban or insurgents were using bayonets, and definitely nothing of this quality. That aside, we'll jump into the construction. Now, you might notice it looks an awful lot like a British pattern 1888 bayonet, and you'd absolutely be correct, except for two major differences. So the British pattern 1888 has a 12-inch blade. This one here is a little bit longer, coming in at 15.23 inches. So this is often referred to as the pattern 1888 long Afghan arsenal. It's a very, very rare bayonet. You don't see them very often. This is the only one I've ever seen sell, and my friend got it for just over $1,000. He spent a lot of money on it. And the other major difference between this and a classic pattern 1888 bayonet is the handle is 7mm shorter. That's something I didn't notice. I actually read that in Kiesling's book. So he made reference that the handle was a little bit shorter, so I checked the measurements of both, and yeah, that's what it was. But looking at the blade, we've got a double-sided dagger style of blade. You can almost call it a sword style of blade. No fuller. And then we've got our cross guard, got a tiny little gulam on this side, and our nice big muzzle ring. We've got hazelnut grips secured by two brass rivets. Have a look at those, quite pretty. And then we actually have a clearance hole for clearing gunk out of the mortise. And we've got the classic pattern 1888 style of pommel with the mortise on the bottom and the muzzle ring on top, and they've got that little recess here to accommodate the barrel. And just like all the rest of them, it has a standard press button, and you can't really see, but there's a ramped lug on the inside, so bayonet lug will come in to press against the ramp, push the button across, and once it passes, it'll snap back into place and lock into place. And then to remove it from the rifle, you have to physically press the lug and pull it off. Really, really nice bayonet. Feels very, very high quality, very well made. Not something you'd expect from modern Afghanistan, but Afghanistan 100 years ago was a completely different country. And then moving down to our scabbard, you'll notice it doesn't have a frog stud, just like the pattern 1903 bayonets. So you just have a leather frog which slides on, it's held on by friction. But we've got our locket up here with a nice big flat mouth. The blade can go in either way, obviously, because it's symmetrical double-sided. And then our locket here is retained by a couple of staples. Got a leather body, nothing much to it really. Stitching down the back or front, depending on your perspective. And we have an internal chape down the bottom, which sort of starts here where my thumb is. I can feel it by squeezing it. And comes all the way down to the base where there is a hole in the leather, and it just protrudes a little bit. So that's all there is to say about the construction. Not a terrible lot. Very, very simple and very much like a British pattern 1888. And finally, we'll touch on the markings. And really, there's not many markings. So first of all, we have our acceptance mark or arsenal mark. It's not entirely clear. So what I've read is it's the Mazar-e-Sharif arsenal stamp, but it's only put on blades that are accepted into service. So whether you want to call it like a accepted into service stamp or a manufacturer's stamp, I'm not really sure. This is the later version. It's 12 millimeters around. The earlier version, pre-1909, was only 8 millimeters, so it's a lot smaller. So that's how you can tell the year of manufacture roughly. All I can tell about this one is it's post 1909. But it's quite a beautiful little stamp, if I can get that in focus. It's depicting the blue mosque. So it's very, very nice. I like it a lot. And then we have nothing on the other ricasso. The only other marking we have on this is 3 digits in what I believe to be Dari, or possibly Pashto, probably Dari. That was the predominant language at the time. Previously, when I've spoken about Afghan bayonets and being marked in a language, I comment that they're in Dari because that's what the reference material I have states. But a lot of people in the comments are trying to tell me it's Farsi, which is what you see in Iran, but another Persian language, I guess. So I'm not certain. Maybe they use the same characters. Maybe it is Farsi, but the literature that I have says Dari. Interestingly enough, when I was actually in the Australian Army, I spent a bit of time learning Pashto, so the other major language currently used in Afghanistan. And the only thing I really took out of that was don't tell someone you're Australian, because Australia sounds a lot like Israel in Pashto, so keep that to yourself. Anyway, guys, that's all I really have to say. The marking on the pommel, by the way, in Dari, I assume just like a rack number, or maybe the last couple of digits of a serial number, or something like that. It's not really clear to me, but it looks like numbers. I don't read Dari, but yeah, it looks very much like numbers from what I've seen, from when I've had a look at their written language. But as I said, that's all I've got to say. Very beautiful bayonet, very, very rare and difficult to find. You do not come across these ever. So when my friend saw this one on eBay, I recommended that if you want it, don't spare the expense because you will not see another. And he went guns blazing, and it's his. Beautiful piece, and I've thoroughly enjoyed looking at it. I wish I knew more. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. If you know any more than that, please feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and thanks for watching.